Good Sunday evening to you folks. With Dorian coming down, bearing down on Florida, going through the Bahamas, incredible devastation apparently being reported in the Bahamas, I thought I would look at some of the worst hurricanes. And I came across this website which goes over them. I think in interesting detail with some images here. 10 worst hurricanes of all time. This is labeled. I'll put the link in the description. Number 10 is Harvey. And the detail for this: after traveling through the Gulf of Mexico in late August 2017, Hurricane Harvey arrived in the United States as a Category 4 storm. It was the first major hurricane to make landfall in the continental United States in a decade. After 2005's Hurricane Wilma and the arrival of Harvey coincided with its peak intensity, winds of 130 miles per hour. So remember the wind speed there. This one is a Sandy. So number 9, Sandy. After barreling through Jamaica, Cuba, and Haiti, the huge slow-moving storm weakened to a post-tropical cyclone before making U.S. landfall in October 2012. But it was strong enough to wreak havoc on New York City and the Jersey Shore. Storm surges of more than 13 feet or 4 meters left parts of lower Manhattan underwater, and residents across the borough without power for days. Meanwhile, parts of Staten Island and beaches in Queens were nearly wiped off the map. Number 8, Camille. Camille, a nasty storm that brought heavy flooding and 200-mile-per-hour winds to the Gulf Coast and later Virginia, was one of only 3 Category 5 hurricanes to hit the continental U.S. since the year 1900. The others were Andrew in 92, which helped change the emergency preparedness policy, and the Labor Day hurricane of 1935. It says, after forming near the Cayman Islands in August 1969, the storm first blew through Cuba at a Category 3 level and later intensified on its way to Mississippi. It weakened to a tropical storm before it reached Virginia, but Camille continued to pour upward of 20 inches of rain, as well as flash flooding and mudslides on a region just 120 miles from the nation's capital. 256 deaths from that one and $1.4 billion damage. Number 7, Gilbert. There are many ways to measure a hurricane, whether wind speed and rains or lives lost and property damage caused, then their sheer size. So Gilbert was a big one. With a 500 nautical mile, that's 926 kilometer diameter, Gilbert was one of the largest hurricanes ever observed in the Atlantic Basin. The storm originated near Cape Verde Islands on the west coast of Africa, the birthplace of some of the worst hurricanes in history. If you watch BP Earthwatch, you can watch them track the hurricanes from northwestern African continent, and as they head over, through the tropical islands of Bahamas, Puerto Rico, those islands there, and you can see them coming through. Number 6, 1935 Florida Keys Labor Day hurricane. This Category 5 storm, considered the strongest to hit the U.S. in the 20th century, brought 200-mile-per-hour winds and soaking rain to the upper and middle Florida Keys, killed approximately 400 people. More than half of the dead were World War I veterans who had been working on building the highway from Key West to Key Largo. Damage in the United States was estimated at $6 million. That was back in 1935. Number 5, Katrina. Hurricane Katrina is often referred to as a man-made rather than natural disaster by those who fault infrastructure problems for the decimation caused by the storm that ravaged New Orleans. So talking about the dikes and the pumps that pump the water out, as New Orleans is below sea level there. On August 26th, Katrina looked like a hurricane that was fizzling out, but it began rapidly strengthening to Category 5 levels on warm water in the Gulf. By August 28th, a mandatory evacuation was ordered for New Orleans. As the now Category 3 hurricane reached the city, water topped over its systems of levees, causing them to break and the streets to flood. It says eventually 80% of the city was under water. Number 4, Maria. Hurricane Maria was a second Category 5 hurricane of the 2017 season, coming just 2 weeks after brutal Irma. Maria was particularly devastating as it passed through some of the same areas that Irma had traveled. Maria reached landfall on the tiny island of Dominica on September 18th of 2017 with wind speeds of 175 miles per hour, and then it moved on to Guadalupe and the U.S. Virgin Islands before destroying the island of Puerto Rico on September 20th with winds of 155 miles per hour and 10 inches of rain. Number 3, Galveston hurricane of the year 1900. Katrina was terrible, but it's not the worst storm in the Gulf Coast. The Galveston hurricane of 1900 took an estimated 6,000 to 12,000 lives, mostly in Texas in September 1900, and is considered the deadliest hurricane in U.S. history. The storm didn't become a hurricane until passing west of the Florida Keys, where a sharp left turn sent it heading straight toward Galveston. That gave residents and local officials less than 4 days to prepare. So boarding up windows, getting food, getting out of the way of it. The Category 4 storm brought 20-foot or 6-meter storm surges and flash flooding, and even pounded Oklahoma and Kansas when it was done with Texas. More than 3,600 homes, as well as a number of structures believed to be quote-unquote storm-proof, were destroyed in the hurricane, whose damage totaled $30 million in the year 1900. Number 2, Hurricane Mitch. Mitch might not have received as much attention in the U.S. as Sandy and Katrina, but the death and devastation this hurricane caused exceeded some of history's better-known storms. A slow-moving hurricane seemingly paused once it reached Honduras in October of 1998, pouring up to 4 inches of rain in an hour for 2 days, causing mudslides and deadly flooding. Along the way, 11,000 people died. Mitch is the second deadliest hurricane on record and the worst to hit the Western Hemisphere in more than 200 years. The storm caused $5 billion in damage in 1998. And number 1, the Great Hurricane of the year 1780. The United States as we know it was just a gleam in George Washington's eye when the hurricane of 1780 blasted its way through the Caribbean, killing approximately 22,000 people. Among the dead were British and American soldiers who had been skirmishing in warships scattered throughout the region as part of the Revolutionary War. While there isn't much data on record regarding the hurricane's speed or rainfall, what we do know is that the storm bombarded several Caribbean islands, including Barbados, Martinique, and St. Lucia. Over 6 days in October, one local observer wrote that the hurricane stripped bark off the trees, which has caused some to speculate that the winds must have topped 200 miles per hour. That's 320 kilometers per hour. This massive storm is considered the deadliest hurricane of all time. So as we look at the deadliest hurricanes, really the top ones for the Western Hemisphere, here is National Hurricane Center and the Central Pacific Hurricane Center. This is the latest bulletin from nhc.noaa.gov. It says the hurricane is currently 175 miles or 280 kilometers off West Palm Beach, Florida. The current maximum sustained winds are 185 miles per hour, 295 kilometers per hour. So some of the top in those top 10 were topping 200 miles per hour. Minimum central pressure is 910 millibars, or 26.88 inches. And they're warning of storm surges from Latania to Volusia Brevard County line. Storm surge watch for Volusia Brevard County line to Flagler Volusia County line. A hurricane warning has been issued for Jupiter Inlet to the Volusia Brevard County line. A hurricane watch has been issued for the Volusia Brevard County line to Flagler Volusia County line. So warnings, watches, pretty much all over Florida, because at this point in time, they don't know exactly where it's going to go or when it's going to make its turn northward. So significant stuff. I'll put the links to both these, but this is the current situation, and it's a big one. It is a big one coming, and we're going to see in the next couple of days, well, I guess tomorrow when it hits Florida, how this stacks up against the 10 worst hurricanes in history. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you guys in the next video.